Jwwilliams have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At Jwwilliams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the Jwwilliams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mr. Trodrick Demond Lawson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Juanita Louise Lawson Deans of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of the Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace of Hawkinsville, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks of Marietta, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Stephanie N. Gibson of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Miss Thelma Jean Brown of Cordele, Georgia. Would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mr. Trodrick Demond Lawson, age 52, of 615 Cardinal Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, January 20, at the Emory Midtown Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Trodrick Demond Lawson, age 52, was held Sunday, January 26, in the chapel of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Brother Mark Smith of the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Beatrice Hinton Lawson of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved children, Miss Jasmine Lawson of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Nicholas Lawson of Warner Robins, Georgia, Miss Nara Lawson of Libram, Georgia, and Mr. DeAndre Hall of Atlanta, Georgia. Three beloved and devoted sisters, Mrs. Marquetta Waters of Lithium Springs, Georgia, Mrs. Talika McDew of Apoco Beach, Florida, and Mrs. Passion Williams of Tampa, Florida. His daughter-in-law, Miss Angela Lawson of Libram, Georgia. His brothers-in-law, Mr. Charlie Waters Jr. of Lithium Springs, Georgia, Mr. Corey McAdoo of Apoco Beach, Florida, and Mr. Tavares Jwwilliams of Tampa, Florida. His beloved aunts, Miss Shelley Lawson, Miss Gloria Jean Lawson, Miss Creasy Lawson, and Miss Jessie Lawson, all of Atlanta, Georgia. Miss Dora Lawson of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved uncle, Mr. Willie Lawson of Columbia, South Carolina, and a host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Trodrick Devon Lawson, age 52, of 615 Cardinal Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Mother Juanita Lawson Deans, age 86, of 925 Fifth Avenue, Rochelle, Georgia, died Saturday, January 18, at the HCA Florida Memorial Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. The funeral service for Mother Juanita Louise Lawson Deans, age 86, was held Sunday, January 26, in the chapel of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, the Reverend Gary Lucas, pastor of the New Travelers Home Baptist Church of Abbeville, Georgia, officiated. The burial followed at the New Travelers Home Baptist Church Cemetery in Abbeville, Georgia. Survivors include 11 and devoted daughters, Mrs. Shirley Deans Favors of Quincy, Florida, Mrs. Melinda Griffin and her husband, Mr. William Griffin of Eastman, Georgia, Mrs. Sylvia Smith and her husband, Mr. Charles Smith, Miss Jane Deans, Miss Natasha Deans, and Miss Robin Deans, all of Rochelle, Georgia. Her loving and devoted son, Mr. Dwayne Deans Sr. of Rochelle, Georgia, and Mr. Stacy Deans of Tifton, Georgia. 28 beloved grandchildren, 69 great-grandchildren. Her loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Francine Dixon, Mrs. Lizzie Queen Johnson, and Mrs. Jeanette Miller, all of Rochelle, Georgia, Miss Linda Lawson, and Mrs. Queen Woodham, and her husband, Deacon John Woodham of Abbeville, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Mr. Kenneth Lawson, Jr. of Abbeville, Georgia. A beloved uncle, Mr. Bud Lawson. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include a special friend, Deacon Willie James Lawson, and his wife, Mrs. Betty Lawson of Atlanta, Georgia, and Miss Bernice Talbert of Rochelle, Georgia. Survived Mother Juanita Louise Lawson Deans, age 86, of 925 Fifth Avenue, Rochelle, Georgia. The Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace, age 39, of 463 Free Providence Drive, Hawkinsville, Georgia, died Sunday, January 19th, at the Houston Medical Center in Warner Robins, Georgia. The funeral service for the Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace, age 39, was held Monday, January 27th, in the sanctuary of the New Hope Baptist Church in Perry, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Dennis Harden, officiated. The burial followed at the Free Providence Church Cemetery in Grovania, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Deacon Kenneth A. Grace and his wife, Mrs. Shanita Grace of Byronville, Georgia, and Mrs. Carolyn B. Walton, and her husband, the Reverend Michael Walton of Warner Robins, Georgia. His loving sisters, Miss Calandra K. Grace of Kathleen, Georgia, and Miss Olandra S. Milligan of Vienna, Georgia. His beloved grandparents, Mr. Freeman Grace Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Velma Grace of Warner Robins, Georgia. Mr. Frankie Collier Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Deborah Collier of Pinehurst, Georgia, and Mrs. Frances Gardner and her husband, Mr. Clifford Gardner of Vienna, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, host of nieces, his beloved godparents, the Reverend Dennis and Mrs. Gloria Harden of Macon, Georgia, and Mr. Horace and Mrs. Betty Ann Gibbard of Warner Robins, Georgia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survived. The Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace, age 39, of 463 Free Providence Drive, Hawkinsville, Georgia. Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks, age 98, of Marietta, Georgia, died Thursday, January 23rd, at the Azalea Manor in Marietta, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks, age 98, was held Saturday, February 1st, in the chapel of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved nephew, the Reverend Joseph Hagerbrook, pastor of the Greater Gum Creek Baptist Church, officiated. Her beloved nephew, the Reverend Calvin Hagerbrook, pastor of Hope in the Word, delivered the eulogy. The burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted siblings, Miss Jeanette Jones of Marietta, Georgia, Mr. Wayman Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Veronica Lewis of Brooklyn, New York, Mrs. Josephine Booker of Brooklyn, New York, and Mr. Joseph Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Delta Lewis of Decatur, Georgia. Her beloved sisters-in-law, Mrs. Doris Lewis and Miss Mary Lewis, both of Cordele, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces and nephews, a host of other relatives to include the Hagerbrook and Lewis family of Cordele, Georgia, survived Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks, age 98, of Marietta, Georgia. Evangelist Stephanie Nicole Gibson, age 55, of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia, died Friday, January 17, at the OU Medical Hospital in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The funeral service for Evangelist Stephanie Nicole Gibson, age 55, was held Saturday, February 1st, at the Newman Matthews Auditorium in Abbeville, Georgia. Dr. Archie T. Smith officiated. The eulogy was delivered by Overseer Warren C. Wins. The burial followed at the Zion Hill Baptist Church Cemetery in Leslie, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted parents, Mrs. Odessa Gibson and Mr. Willie Gibson of Abbeville, Georgia. Her loving and devoted children, Mr. Crispy Young, Mrs. Treasure Monroe and her husband, Mr. Darius Monroe, and Mrs. Ebony Rhines and her husband, Mr. Kurt Rhines. 5 beloved grandchildren. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Willie Denard Gibson and his wife, Mrs. Sabrina Gibson, Mr. Calvin Gibson and his wife, Mrs. Lisa Gibson, Mr. Tyrone Gibson, Mr. Gabriel Gibson, Mr. Paul Gibson, and Mr. Bobby Gibson. A host of beloved aunts and uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Evangelist Stephanie Nicole Gibson, age 55, of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia. Miss Thelma Jean Brown, age 72, of 712 West 15th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, January 23rd, at her residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Thelma Jean Brown, age 72, was held Saturday, February 1st, in the sanctuary of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend W. Wilson, delivered the eulogy. The Reverend Dion Jones officiated. The burial followed at the Pleasant Valley Baptist Church Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted sister, Miss Betty Wilson of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved brother, Mr. Dale Brown of Cordele, Georgia, her loving and devoted nieces and nephews whom she helped rear, Mrs. Vanessa Hoggebrook and her husband, Mr. Kenneth Hoggebrook Sr., Deacon Al Jones and his wife, Mrs. Sabrina Jones, Miss Lashina Wilson and her companion, Mr. Christopher Clayton, and Mrs. Demetrius Kendall, all of Cordele, Georgia, and Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas Morgan and his wife, Mrs. Shantorica Morgan of Byron, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces and nephews, to include her special nieces, Miss Kalisha Linda, Miss Tonda Brown, Miss Angela Walker, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her godmother, Mother Naomi Stubbs of Cordele, Georgia. A host of beloved cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include Miss Linda Moore, Miss Mary Davis, Miss Renee Harvey of Cordele, Georgia, and Miss Peggy Harris of Rochelle, Georgia. Survived Miss Thelma Jean Brown, age 72, of 712 West 15th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Again, the family of Mr. Trodrick Devon Lawson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Juanita Louise Lawson Deans of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of the Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace of Hawkinsville, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks of Marietta, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Stephanie Nicole Gibson of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Miss Thelma Jean Brown of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Jwwilliams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Mr. Jayshon Jacquez Howard, age 22, of 664 Mills Road, Byronville, Georgia, died Sunday, January 26, of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Mr. Jawan Hardrick of Vienna, Georgia, and Miss Crystal A. Howard of Pennsylvania. A beloved sister, Miss Jade N. Power of Pennsylvania. His caring brothers, Mr. Jekyll L. Power and Mr. J. Marcus L. Power Jr., both of Hawkinsville, Georgia, and Mr. Macquarius Minor of Warner Robins, Georgia, Mr. Jadarius Hardrick of Vienna, Georgia, his beloved and devoted grandparents, Mr. Johnny and Miss Jeanette Kendrick of Byronville, Georgia, Mrs. Betty Hardrick and Mr. Benton Sr. of Vienna, Georgia, his beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Tranika Hall and her husband, Mr. Garrett Hall, Mr. Travis Howard, Mr. Brian Adams, Mrs. Calandra Hardrick, Miss LaSasha Bendrick, Miss Angelica Bennett, and Mr. Bendros Bennett Jr., and Mr. Richard Bennett, all of Columbus, Georgia. A host of beloved cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive Mr. Jayshon Jacquez Howard, age 22, of 664 Mills Road, Byronville, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Jayshon Jacquez Howard, age 22, will be held Tuesday, February 4th at 12 noon in the chapel of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Jerry Sanders, pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church in Newland, Georgia, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Mrs. Annie Bell Hawkins, age 71, of 1111 McClendon Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 28th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Kelvin Bell of Tennessee, Mrs. Elizabeth Stanford and her spouse, Mr. Cosmo Brown of Savannah, Georgia, and Mrs. Ida Arner and her spouse, Miss Melissa Arner of Cordele, Georgia. 5 beloved grandchildren, Mr. Cartel Ford, Mr. Preston Brown, Miss Kiana Bell, Mr. Cannon Bell, and Mr. Jeremiah Ill. Her loving and devoted sister, Miss Oris Bell of Tallahassee, Florida, Miss Mary Wayman and her spouse, Mr. David Wayman of Jacksonville, Florida. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Freddie Bell of Alabama, and Mr. Sam Bell and his spouse, Mrs. Helen Bell of South Carolina. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Annie Bell Hawkins, age 71, of 1111 McClendon Court, Cordele, Georgia. The memorial service for Mrs. Annie Bell Hawkins, age 71, will be held Saturday, February 8th at 2 p.m. at the Hilltop Church of Christ in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Brother James L. Hughes, will officiate. Mr. Mitchell James Johnson, age 70, of Lithonia, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 29th, at the Crossview Care Center in Pineview, Georgia. Survivors include a beloved son, Mr. Kyrie Johnson of Brooklyn, New York, a host of other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Mitchell James Johnson, age 70, of Lithonia, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Mitchell James Johnson, age 70, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The Jwwilliams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the Jwwilliams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the Jwwilliams Funeral Home. And also whole life insurance is available at the Jwwilliams Funeral Home.
And now for announcements. The Mount Moriah Baptist Church of Unadilla's second pastoral anniversary honoring Pastor Edward and First Lady Shelba Lester will be observed today, Sunday, February the 2nd, at 1:30 p.m. New Travelers Home Baptist Church of Hawkinsville, and Pastor Gary Lucas will be in charge of the service. Sister Linda Ann Jordan, Mission President, Deacon Earl Jordan, Chairman of Deacons, Pastor Edward Lester is the pastor. The Pleasant Hill Baptist Church of Byronville Family and Friends Day will be today, Sunday, February the 2nd, beginning at 11 o'clock a.m. Everyone is invited to fellowship with them. Sister Gloria Lucas, reporter, Sister Mary Jo Redding, church mother, Deacon Jimmy Redding, chairman, Brother Rodney Duncan is the pastor. The Big Poplar Spring Baptist Church of Unadilla Black History Program will be observed on Sunday, February 23rd at 11 o'clock a.m. Sister Vera Adams Brown will be the speaker. Dinner will be served. Sister LaChina Whitehead is the church secretary. Deacon Wilbur Whitehead Jr. is the chairman of deacons. Brother Lucius Albrecht Jr. is the pastor. The St. John AME Church of Plains Annual Family and Friends Day pre-Super Bowl Sunday will be observed today at 11:15 a.m. Reverend Donna D. Baker, District Consultant of the Eastern District, will be the guest speaker. Reverend Shirley Straughter is the senior pastor. The New Beulah Baptist Church of Lee County Annual Men and Women's Day celebration will be observed today at 11 o'clock a.m. Reverend Gary Sanders of Albany, Georgia, will be the guest minister. Sister Rosemary Jones is the secretary. Deacon Bobby Robinson Jr. is the chairman of deacons. Reverend Christopher Perry is the pastor. The Antioch Baptist Church of America's annual Youth Anniversary and Black History Program will be Sunday, February 2nd, today, beginning at 11 o'clock a.m. You may contact Ms. Cynthia Maddox or Ms. Jessica Dowdell for more information or participation. Deacon David Laster, chairman of deacons. Reverend Ricky Cladd is the pastor. The Women Deliverance Ministry Reunited in Love Banquet will be Saturday, February the 8th at 6 o'clock p.m. at the Leslie Civic Center in Leslie, Georgia. Featured on the program will be Bishop George Edge of the Restoration Church of Americas and Pastor Angela Zanders of the Anointed Hearts Church. For any additional information, please contact Dr. Georgia Daraso at 229-942-2509 or Sister Mary Thomas at 229-938-5531. The Jerusalem Baptist Church of Ellaville will celebrate the third pastoral anniversary honoring Dr. Deanne and Reverend Johnny Holsey, Sunday, February the 9th at 2 o'clock p.m. Whole Truth International Ministries and Elder Deborah Muntz will be the special guest. Everyone is cordially invited to attend. Dr. Deanne Holsey is the pastor. The House of God Church of Plains, Georgia, first pastoral anniversary honoring Elder Anthony Jackson will be Sunday, February 23rd at 1 p.m. Reverend Ben Carter of the House of God Church of Americas will be the guest speaker. Bishop Dr. Clary K. Butler, Sr., Chief Overseer, Elder Anthony Jackson is the pastor. Friendship Baptist Church will celebrate the 36th anniversary honoring Bishop and First Lady Melvin McCluster on Sunday, February 23rd. At 10 o'clock a.m., Bishop Henry Moore will deliver the message. At 1 o'clock p.m., Reverend Larry Sims will deliver the message. Everyone has a cordial invitation to fellowship during these worship services. Bishop Melvin McCluster is the pastor. The Ever Ready Spiritual Heirs 52nd anniversary will be on March 2nd at 3 o'clock p.m. at the St. John Baptist Church. For more information, please contact Brother Anthony Daraso at 229-815-4201. Brother Jesse Watts Jr. at 229-942-3747, or Brother Johnny Griffin Jr. at 229-942-2206. The Mount Zion First African Baptist Church Annual Black History Program will be Sunday, February the 2nd, today at 11 o'clock a.m. Sister Jean Oliver Burks will be the speaker. Deacon Joe Wedges is the chairman of deacons. Dr. Dan James III is the pastor. The Beautiful Zion Baptist Church Women in Red program will be today at 11 o'clock a.m. Minister Janice Sales will be the guest speaker. Reverend Lorinda Ray is the pastor. The Evergreen Baptist Church of Rochelle Family and Friends Day will be observed on Sunday, February the 9th at 11 o'clock a.m. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Pain for My Purpose 21st 2025 Women Conference will be on Saturday, February 15th at 11 a.m. at the Clara Scott Activity Center in Cordele. Our program will be Pastor Levator Hall Bass, speaker, Sister Cheryl Ray, Sister Regina Barnes, and Minister Cheryl Ray on Sunday, February 16th at 10 a.m. at Little Rock Baptist Church. Our program will be Pastor Deanne Wright Holsey, speaker, and Dr. Bylene Ray. Unity colors are red, black, and white. Reverend Joseph Green is the pastor. The Wilcox County Black History Festival celebrating hometown heroes will be Friday, February 21st through Sunday, February 23rd. Events will include on Friday refreshments and music at Mumford Park from 12 p.m. until 4 p.m. Saturday, a parade lineup at 10:30 a.m. at Mumford Park. The Black History program will be at 1 p.m. at the Abbeville Elementary School gym, honoring retired teachers, school employees, and military personnel from Wilcox County. Youth essay and art contest winners will be presented. Lunch will be served immediately after the program. The festival will climax Sunday with a gospel singing that will be held at the Elizabeth Baptist Church at 3 o'clock p.m. For more information, please contact Brother Joe Hill at 229-313-9710. A Moment of Black History Gospel Musical will be held on Sunday, February 23rd at 4 o'clock p.m. at Mount Calvary Baptist Church. Our program will be the Gospel Stars of Lilly, Georgia, the Gospel Travelers of Oakfield, Truly Blessed of Albany, Pastor Rosa Sanford of Cordele, Next Level, the Gospel Saints, and many others. Deacon Leon Spears, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, is the pastor. Brother Norris Mathis' 18th Gospel Anniversary will be Sunday, February 23rd at 4 o'clock p.m. at the St. James Baptist Church, Hapeville Road, Cordele, Georgia. Our program will be the Gospel Travelers of Oakfield, Highly Favored of Warner Robins, the Jenkins Jubilee of Americas, Truly Blessed of Albany, Chosen Voices of Montezuma, the Gospel Pioneers, the Gospel Stars, Bubba, and the Violinaires of Chester, Georgia. For more information, contact Minister Gloria W. Mathis at 229-947-1516 or Brother Norris Mathis at 229-417-0034. Doors open at 3 o'clock p.m. Reverend Nelson Maynard is the host pastor. The Historical Awards Committee of Cordele, Crisp County Black History Display walkthrough of some famous Black Americans from Crisp County will be on Saturday, February the 8th from 11 a.m. until 2 o'clock p.m. at Blackshear Place. There will be door prizes, free hot dogs, chips, and sodas. Come out and learn more about Crisp County's Black history. Former Commissioner A.J. Rivers is the founder. Deacon Tommy Ford Jr. is the president. You're cordially invited to worship at the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church today. Worship service begins at 9 a.m., Sunday school at 9:30 a.m. Mother Mary Henderson, Church Mother, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Chairman of Deacons, Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Gethsemane Baptist Church. Worship service begins at 10:30 a.m. this morning. Deacon Johnny Wilson, Chairman of Deacons, Brother Cecil Strawder is the pastor. You're invited to worship at the New Oak Road Baptist Church. Sunday school at 9:15 a.m. Worship service at 10 o'clock a.m. Deacon Alonzo Jones, Chairman, Reverend W.W. Wilson is the pastor. You're invited to worship at the Greater Gum Creek Baptist Church this morning. Worship service at 10:30 a.m. Mother Norma Solomon, Church Mother. Deacon Zachary Fields, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend Joseph Hoggebrook is the pastor. Everyone has a cordial invitation to worship at the St. Paul Presbyterian Church today. Worship service at 11 o'clock a.m. Pastor Rita Hageman is the pastor. The Mount Olive Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them this morning. Sunday school at 9 a.m., worship service at 10 a.m. Mother Willie Mae Walker, Church Mother. Deacon Jimmy Fagan, Chairman of Deacons. Bishop Jerome Milton is the pastor. The Emmanuel Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them each Sunday. Sunday school at 10 o'clock a.m., worship service at 11:15 a.m. Bible study is held each Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Mother Willie McGill, Church Mother. Reverend Gregory Williams is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the New William Grove Baptist Church this morning. Worship service begins at 11 o'clock a.m. Deacon Winfred Green, Chairman of Deacons. Mother Granine Ford, Church Mother. Reverend Nikita Lester is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church today. Sunday school at 9:45 a.m. Worship service at 10:45 a.m. Mother Evelyn Lewis, Church Mother. Deacon Leon Spears, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend Isaac Owens is the pastor. That concludes our announcements for this morning.
And now for dedications. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: in loving memory of Mother Bobby Mae Fagan, who would have celebrated her birthday January 27th. Dedication requested by her beloved children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the entire family. Gone gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Deacon Willie D. Fagan, who would have celebrated his birthday January 31st, dedication requested by his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the entire Fagan family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of our beloved Mrs. Elizabeth Graham, known to all of us as Big Mama, who would have celebrated her birthday February 1st, dedication requested by her beloved daughter, Deaconess Martha A. Cross, and the entire family, and the members of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church, where she served so faithfully, her pastor, Dr. Jwwilliams, and Deacon Tommy Ford. Gone but not forgotten, in memory of Mrs. Elizabeth Graham, better known as Big Mama. In loving memory of Mr. Charles Ray, who would have celebrated his birthday February 2nd, dedication requested by the Ray family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Dora Lee Kingston, who departed this life February 4, 2009, dedication requested by Mr. Dewey and Mr. Robert Jones. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Mr. Reem William Davis, who departed this life February and would have celebrated his birthday February 5th, dedication requested by Mrs. Mary Frances Davis. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. Barney Jackson, who would have celebrated his birthday February 5th, dedication requested by the Jackson family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. Barnes Lamar, who would have celebrated his birthday February 5th, dedication requested by the Lamar family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. Robert Lee Coley, who departed this life February 7, 2024. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, Mrs. Loretta Coley, and the entire family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Annie Mae Coffin, who would have celebrated her birthday February 15, dedication requested by the Coffin and Porter family and the members of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church, where she served so faithfully, Pastor Dr. K.M. Williams and Deacon Tommy Ford Jr. Our first selection this morning goes out to the following. Happy birthday to Miss Naisha Davis, who would have celebrated her birthday Saturday, February 1st. Dedication requested by Mrs. Mary Frances Davis. Happy birthday to Mr. Winford Jones, who will celebrate his birthday Monday, February 3rd. Dedication requested by the Jones and Smith families. Happy birthday to Mrs. Maddie Hancock, who will celebrate her birthday Monday, February 3rd. Dedication requested by her beloved family. Happy birthday to Mr. Ladarius Davis, who will celebrate his birthday Tuesday, February 4th. Dedication requested by Mrs. Mary Frances Davis. And happy birthday to Mrs. Mary Frances Davis, who will celebrate her birthday Wednesday, February 5th. Dedication requested by the Davis family. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Deacon James Smith and family, Deacon George Jordan and family, son Deacon Jerome Jordan and family, Vienna, Georgia, Mr. A.J. and Mother Vera Rivers and the entire Rivers family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie James Patrick and family, Mrs. Bernice Laster and family, Miss Shirley Ray and family, Miss Claudette Waters and family, Mrs. Willie Mae Craft and family, Mother Willie Mae Leary and family of Hatley, Georgia, Mother Martha Ruth Westbrook and family of Araby, Georgia, Chairman Deacon Roger Westbrook and family, Deacon and Mrs. Lawrence Williams and family of Leslie, Georgia, Mother Mary Minion and family, Plains, Georgia, Miss Susie Henderson and family, Brother Mark Westbrook and family, the entire Westbrook family, Brother and Mrs. Leslie Merriweather and family, Deacon and Mrs. Janet Wilson and family, Miss Linda Wilson and family, the entire Wilson family, Geraldine Harvey and family, the Reverend Lorinda Ray and family, Elder J.C. and Minister Annette Clark and family, the Reverend Willie E. Lockett and Sister Helen Lockett and the entire Lockett family, Deacon Emery Wright and family of Albany and Lee County, Georgia, Mother Mamie Robinson and family, Mrs. Elizabeth Waters and family, retired educator of the Chris County School System, Apostle Morris Jones and family, the Talbot family, Deacon and Mrs. John Stubbs and family, Deacon and Mrs. Donald Talbot and family, Mrs. Juanita Talbot and family, the Lawton and Epps family, the Rogers family, Mr. Charles and Miss Vivian Daniels and family, Mr. F.D. Lawton and family, Mrs. Lois Reynolds and family, Miss Claudette Armstrong and family, the Christopher family, the Mobley family, Mother Pearl Reed and family, Mother Jessica Harmon and family, Mother Mary Henderson and family, Mrs. Costello Levant and family, Mrs. Dorothy Westbrook and family, Chris Cordell City Commissioner, Vesta Bill Shepherd and the entire Bill family, Miss Mary Bill and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Nelson Maynard and family, the Reverend Fred and Mrs. Jackie Brown and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Jeff Wilson and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Joseph Hagerbrook and family, Deacon Leroy and Sister Diane Thomas and family, Mrs. Monica Westbrook and family, Mr. Roscoe Applin and family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie Frank Collier and family, Mr. Gus Williams and family, Miss Marion Felton and family, Deacon Lanny Hagerbrook and family, Mrs. Sharon Chambliss and family, Mrs. Frances Chambliss and family, Miss Verdell Butts and family, Mr. James Grant and family, Miss Curtina Grant and family, Miss Debbie Reed and family, Mrs. Stephanie Grant and family, the family of the late Mother Grace Patrick, Mr. and Mrs. Jimmy Passmore and family, Mr. and Mrs. Keith Bryan and family, Miss Denise Walker and family, the Eddie Hester family, Pineview, Georgia, Mrs. Joanne Kerr and family, Mr. and Mrs. Joshua Woodson and family, Mrs. Bernice Smith and family, Chairman Deacon and Mrs. Sammy McGill and family, Deacon and Mrs. Charles Glenn and family, Deacon and Mrs. Charlie Westbrook and family, the family of the late Mother Cornelius Jackson, Mr. and Mrs. Dwight Templeton and family, Miss Sue James and family, Mrs. Joanne Atkins and family, Miss Faustine Carruthers and family, Miss Donna Cobb and family, the Reverend Jimmy Felton and the entire Felton family, Mrs. China Ezel and family and the staff at BJ's Diner, Mrs. Nellie Shivers and family, Deaconess Carrie Brooks and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Woody Barnum and family, Mrs. Marion Golphin and family, Mr. and Mrs. Charlie Clark and family, Deacon and Mrs. Michael Morgan and family, the family of the late Deacon Henry King of the Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church, Mr. and Mrs. Alonzo Flood and family, Deacon and Mrs. Otis Blanks and family, Mrs. James Russell Brunell and family, Mrs. Janice Jones and family, Mr. Willie Frank Hayes and family, Miss Juanita Jefferson and family, Miss Betty Taylor and family, Mrs. Betty Oliver and family, Mrs. Diane McClendon and family, Miss Mary Hill and family, Mrs. Loretta Cole and family, Mrs. Willibelle Lawson and family, Mrs. Samuel Mills and family, the family of the late Deacon Rufus Hagerbrook, Mrs. Lula Bell Hill and family, Deacon and Mrs. Janice C. Hillsman and family of Tifton, Georgia, Mrs. Ruby Kitchen and family, Deacon and Mrs. Bobby James and family, Mrs. Priscilla Thomas and family, Mrs. Helen Ray, Mr. Jesse Walker and family, Mr. Edward Johnson and family, Trudy Mae Johnson and family, Deacon Curtis Lucas Jr. and family, Mrs. Carrie Bell Woodson and family, Mrs. Clara Graham and family, Mrs. Angela Jones and family, Ms. Rubinell Anderson and family, Mr. Charlie Ray and family, Mr. Kenneth Staley and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Eddie Gant and family, Mr. and Mrs. Bernard Williams and family, Mrs. Annie Curry and family, the Reverend Ivory and Sister Dorothy Corbin and family, Mrs. Nathaniel Curry and family, Deacon and Mrs. Charles Harris Sr. of Albany, Georgia, Mr. Willie Holmes and family, Mrs. Pearlie Griggs and family, Mr. Willie Jackson and family, Mr. Scotty Anderson and family, Mrs. Jackie Ridley and family, Mr. Sean Woods and family, Mr. Robert Harvey and family, Dr. and Mrs. Michael Overstreet and family, Mr. and Mrs. Tim Lockett and family. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Mr. Deshaun Jacquez Howard, age 22, of 664 Mills Road, Byronville, Georgia, died Sunday, January 26th, of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. The funeral service for Mr. Deshaun Jacquez Howard, age 22, will be held Tuesday, February 4th at 12 noon in the chapel of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Jerry Sanders, pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church in Newland, Georgia, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Mrs. Annie Bell Hawkins, age 71, of 1111 McClendon Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 28th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The memorial service for Mrs. Annie Bell Hawkins, age 71, will be held Saturday, February 8th at 2 p.m. at the Hilltop Church of Christ in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Brother James L. Hughes, will officiate. Mr. Mitchell James Johnson, age 70, of Lithonia, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 29th at the Crossview Care Center in Pineview, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Mitchell James Johnson, age 70, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangement. The Jwwilliams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our program this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mr. Troderick Demond Lawson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Juanita Louise Lawson Deans of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of the Reverend Kenneth Fajon Grace of Hawkinsville, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Marie Lewis Hicks of Marietta, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Stephanie Nicole Gibson of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Miss Thelma Jean Brown of Cordele, Georgia. Our program is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Mr. Deshaun Jacquez Howard of Byronville, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Annabelle Hawkins of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Mitchell James Johnson of Lithonia, Georgia. Our program is dedicated to all of the sick and shut in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker, to This selection goes out to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Knightseen Dexter, and their grandson, Noble. This selection goes out to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Jim Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. This selection goes out to my niece, Mrs. Vera Mathis, goes out to Mrs. Florine Manning, and the entire Manning and Mumphrey family. Goes out to my nephew, Mr. Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church. Goes out to our pastor, Dr. Jwwilliams, and his wife, Sister Catherine Williams, and our son, the Reverend Christopher Williams, and the members of the Antioch Baptist Church of Cuthbert, Georgia. This lecture goes out to our dear friend and brother, long-standing, the Reverend Johnny Dean, pastor of the New Poplar Springs Baptist Church of Byronville, Georgia. Goes out to our brother, Deacon Jimmy Charles Montford, his wife, Sister Carol Montford, educator of the Chris County School System. Goes out to our brother Leon Hawkins, and to his mother, Mrs. Melaine Hawkins, and family, entire Hawkins family of Americus, Georgia. This letter goes out to Mother Adeline Lofton, church mother of the Little Rock Baptist Church of Araby, Georgia. Goes out to Mother Willie McGill and family, and to each and every one, to our beloved Mrs. Easter Bay Sanders and family. Goes out to Mr. Cleveland R. Lemon, the oldest staff member of the Jwwilliams Funeral Home. And to each of you who listen to our program on each Sunday morning, God bless you this first Sunday in February 2025.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. And remember, in your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the Jwwilliams